Hi, it's Jerry Roberts back with another edition of Newsmakers Journal of the Plague Year. We're talking about the presidential election today. It is 9 Tuesdays before Election Day, 63 days before the election. And we have my old Calbuzz partner, veteran political analyst, Phil Trounstine with us. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing okay, brother.
So Trump came out of his convention having tried to seize the definition of the election as being about law and order, and events keep cooperating with him. This vigilante shooting in Kenosha, Wisconsin, the Portland guy, the white supremacist shot dead, and I guess the cops shot another guy in LA this morning or yesterday. So, Biden tried to make it about the virus and tried to make it about character. Trump is really pounding on law and order. How do you think that's working?
Well, I think you're right. I think that's what the whole strategy of the Trump campaign is now to sort of take the famous refrain from Dixie, look away, and he wants you to look away from the virus, look away from the economy, and focus on anarchy and violence and Black Lives Matter, as if to say that what he wants to do is replace the real threats that face America, which are COVID and the economy, with the notion that Black Lives Matter and all these protesters and anarchists are going to take over your neighborhood, rape your daughters, and burn down your house. So the question is, can you make George Wallace on steroids work in 2020? I don't know whether that's possible, but I think that's their strategy. And
Yeah.
I think that Biden has confronted it face to face. He's called it for what it is. And the question is, will the American voters be persuaded that Black Lives Matter is more dangerous to them than COVID-19?
Well, and even more important, will Wisconsin voters be persuaded?
Exactly.
Because
if you do the math, Jerry, this is scary. If you do the math, the way I've calculated it is, if Trump holds all of the states that he won in 2016, even if he loses Pennsylvania and Michigan, if he keeps Wisconsin, he wins the electoral vote by 2 votes.
Right. So I don't think there's been any recent polling in Wisconsin. The last thing was about a month ago. Biden was up 3.5. But I keep, reading about how intensive the support for Trump is in rural counties there. So he's ahead, Biden's ahead nationally 6.2. In the battleground states, this is according to the Real Clear Politics poll of polls, he's up 2.7. But what's interesting is that Hillary was up 3.3 in 2016 in those same battleground states. So it's getting kind of scary. It's getting kind of scary there. The other thing I look at is the betting markets, as you know, and where Biden was, 55-45 a week, 10 days or 2 weeks ago, it's now 50.3 to 49. So Biden's plus 1.3 in the betting market. So, I mean, the problem is, and I think to a certain extent, Trump was successful in doing this at his convention. And we talked about, how could he get white suburban, particularly women, back to him? And even though there was a lot of fire and brimstone and pounding on the wingnut theories and so on, you know, this parade of black male speakers that they had, as well as women saying, oh, he's not a racist. Oh, if you really knew him, he's not a misogynist and so on. You know, trying to create a permission structure for, you know, people who don't, who actually are kind of afraid that Biden and AOC are going to take over the world, to get back to him and say, well, you know, all these black guys said he wasn't racist. I guess I can be for him, you know, with the cities burning. Do you think that worked for him? Do you think that was pretty effective?
Well, I don't, the polls don't suggest so. The polls suggest that he didn't get much of a bounce out of any of it. I think you're right. The specific target of that message is suburban women, where and rural voters who believe that if they believe that Trump is an indecent human being, they won't be able to vote for him. But if they think that there's a shred of decency about him, then they can probably be for him. And I think that's exactly what the Lincoln Project went after with their most recent ad, which shows Trump doing where he made mocking fun of the right. Reporter with the ALS, and he you know, grab him by the pussy, that sort of stuff. What they've done is they've tried to remind people, those very people, that very small sliver of the electorate, that this is an indecent man. If they are successful at that, and if Biden continues, and Trump continues to betray himself, which he almost certainly will, then, you know, that's where it's going to happen, Jerry. I think we could get a Trump reelection, or we could get a massive Biden election.
Yeah,
but I mean, very narrow.
You know, all this burning and looting and dead guys and stuff. It helps Trump on the natural. Even though, you know, it's these a lot of, you know, right-wing white supremacist groups that are in there, but then you have these knucklehead Antifa guys, you know, who are basically young white men also, and they're, you know, shooting at each other and they're killing each other, and, you know, it just creates this atmosphere of chaos. And for, you know, for some reason, which I don't understand, the paradox is that people are not seeing that that's Trump's America. I mean, Trump keeps it, this is Biden's America. It's not Biden's. How has he been able to make it so he's running as an insurgent challenger when he's the when he's the president of the United States?
Well, that's, you know, we said that a couple of weeks ago. You and I talked about this, and I said that what I thought that Biden had done with his speech at the convention was flip the race so that he sounds like a president. The danger is it gives Trump the ability to run as an outsider against what? His own America? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any logical sense, but logic has never been the guts of what makes Donald Trump's candidacy and presidency possible.
Well, and the other thing this has all done is it's at least temporarily pushed the virus out of the headlines. I mean, there's 185,000 bodies stacked up in the corner now, you know, but pay no attention to those. So, you know, if his speech at the White House, where everybody was 3 inches of socially distanced at 3 inches and not wearing a mask, you know, becomes a super spreader event, or if, you know, something happens in Wisconsin, if somehow the virus gets back to being the story, which is, I think, right now the primary threat to people's security, then Biden can prevail. But I think if the argument stays on that, I don't know, he just hasn't pushed back effectively enough. Everybody keeps talking about he needs a sister soldier moment and so on. Has he done that enough? I don't think so, because the other piece of it is that Trump has the cops. This whole defund the police argument by Black Lives Matter has really weakened Biden and Harris's position.
Well, the question is, will reality impinge? Because we know, objectively speaking, we have 183,000 dead Americans. We have an economy that has lost massive numbers of jobs. We have terrible unemployment, people living in isolation. We know what the reality is. Trump's ability in the past, and we don't know whether it's going to continue to work in the future, is to make people not focus on what's real and focus on what he says you should focus on. Right now, what he wants you to focus on is those Black Lives Matter people and AOC with knives in their teeth, racing into your suburbs, getting ready to burn down your home or take it over.
So, and he's at 43.4% where he always is. Right. And I think, one of the big factors that we haven't talked about is, people say, well, I can't believe that he's still at 43. What's wrong with these people? Why do they stick with him? Because it's all about negative partisanship, which is this huge factor in our politics today, which is people are more motivated by hating the other party, by despising what they stand for, than any positive, legislative program or anything else that they want to do. They want to own the libs. They hate the Democrats. It's certainly as true with the Democrats. 6 out of 10 Biden supporters in this ABC poll said they're voting for him primarily to be against Trump. So, I don't see that there's any room for any big movement here. I mean, those are the two blocks. So it is going to come down once again to these tiny little vote percentages in the swing states, and how Trump attempts to steal the election in any case by spinning the election night results, saying I won, and then anything after that happens. So, you and I have historically been critical, if not mocking, about Democratic bedwetters, because Democrats tend to over-worry about everything. But I think it's time to wet the bed here. What do you think?
Well, I think what this does, Jerry, is goes back to something that you and I have talked about for quite a long time, which is will the Democrats be able to, and Kamala Harris is sort of key to this, can they boost the vote in some very specific places, in Milwaukee, in Detroit, in Philadelphia? Because if they can get 3 to 5% increase in Milwaukee, they can carry Wisconsin. Black voters could carry Wisconsin if they can jack up Obama-level vote. They got to get Obama-level vote in Wisconsin in order to carry it.
Well, and that was the other, I think, target of having all those black men speak. They're really going after black men, not, they've given up on black women, but if they can steal just 1 or 2% or depress the turnout among black men, then they're home free. So
that's their strategy. That I totally agree. And look, there's no reason why home-owning blacks are less susceptible to the notion that protesters are going to come burn down your house than are home-owning whites. it's as much an economic status argument as it is a racial argument. He's made protection of single-family homes a national issue. I mean, well, you remember back when in 1990, when Dianne Feinstein wanted to make planning a statewide issue, and Bill Carrick, who was her consultant at the time, said, "No way is that going to happen on my watch. We're not going to let planning become a statewide issue." Trump has made planning a national issue.
Yeah.
He's made urban zoning a national issue. That's extraordinary.
Poor old San Francisco State Senator Scott Wiener has now become the target. He's in the AOC thing. I mean, the other thing is, if you look back at the Democratic convention, and, I thought it was successful for what it was trying to do, which in part was, paper over the differences between the Bernie wing and the Biden wing. And they did it by, attesting to Biden's character. Oh, he's a nice guy. He'll bring, he'll attempt to work with anyone, blah, blah, blah. And again, Hillary tried to run against Trump's character in 2016, and it didn't matter. But
Jerry, Hillary was not that likable. Obama
she was likable enough, as someone famously said.
She was just likable enough. And, I never bought into that per se. You never bought into that per se. We sort of looked at her as a political character, not as
a personality.
Yeah, not as a personality. And so, but as a personality,
out of step. We were out of
personality.
Step.
She was not somebody that you could warm up to. Joe Biden's a different character. He really is a decent human being. And so that piece of dynamic isn't quite the same, I think.
So it's hope versus fear, right?
Yeah.
And fear, I think, is the most effective political argument.
Well, and it's fear of, like I say, it's not fear of what's real. It's fear of what he constructs. I mean, there's some tinges of reality to it. There's some rioting going on here and there, and there's some ugliness. But it's not 180,000 free people that are being killed in the streets. They're being killed by COVID-19. And Kamala made a really interesting point the other day in a speech. I have to give her credit. She didn't say it in quite so many words, but what she said was, Trump's incompetence has now become deadly. And that's a really important formulation, that it's not just that he's incompetent, it's that his incompetence is killing people.
Yeah.
He's killed 183,000 people. That's a good formulation for the Democrats.
Yeah, I just think that argument's being drowned out right now. I mean, I just think he's hijacked the message wars, and right now everybody's talking about what his message is. And as we said last time, it's going to be events. How do events play out from here? And who knows? Guys got paint guns and real guns, and it's just crazy. But I just worry about the way that the Democrats have defined the election in the current atmosphere. Whether that's going to be enough. The other thing is these Senate races again, which I think are so crucial, because if the Democrats are able to win in Arizona, Colorado, Maine, and maybe Iowa, maybe North Carolina, other places, then it's going to be hard for Trump to say, oh, they're stealing the election from me, because they've.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think those are important, and I think the margin of vote in the presidential race matters. If it's very narrow, electoral win for Joe Biden, for example, then I think Trump, and if the Democrats don't take back the Senate, then I think we may see months of
77 days. He's got 77 days after the election when he's still the president for who knows what kind of evil
Right.
mischief.
And if they don't resolve it, by January 20th, uh, Nancy Pelosi becomes president of the United States.
All right. The other thing that goes along with this negative partisanship, of course, is the information silos where people are getting their information from, and Fox, CNN, MSNBC.
Yeah.
So the other thing that becomes crucial is, who calls the states on election night?
Right.
And that Fox is going to be over there pitching, saying, it appears that, Donald Trump has won Wisconsin. I mean, I'm sure they got the script ready to go already.
Right.
So then you get into this situation where you have conflicting media narratives that are going on. And, he doesn't want to be, I mean, it was so clear at his convention. He doesn't want to be president of the United States. He wants to be president of the red states. And he is president of the red states. And that's good enough for him. He makes no pretense about trying to unify us. Anybody that's against him is bad.
Well, we sort of long for the days when there was this sort of accepted truth. There was a thing that the major news media could look at and say, that actually over there is a set of facts that define reality. And since the rise of Fox News, we no longer have an accepted common reality that Walter Lippmann wrote about, back in the 20s and 30s. We no longer have an accepted set of what constitutes real and unreal. And so Fox News owns, what is it, 30, 40% of the viewing public?
That is the state propaganda organ.
Exactly.
That's what that is. We have a propaganda organ,
exactly. We have our own Pravda, or so whatever they say. I know people. I've got a couple people. One person in my family who watches nothing but Fox News, and she believes everything they say. That's the way reality is defined. And there's no reasoning, no set of alternate facts can dissuade that. So on election night, it's going to be a really, really strange and disturbing thing to watch, I think, don't you?
Yeah, it's all very disturbing right now. All right, so what's the headline on this here, Chief? 9 weeks to go, what's the headline? It's hope versus fear, or what?
Well, I think it's COVID versus BLM. Trump wants you to fear Black Lives Matter more than COVID-19. And if he is successful at making that stick, and maybe just if he's successful in Wisconsin, he gets reelected. And so it's not so much hope versus fear. It is hope versus fear, but it's really sort of, what do you want to look at? What's the big fear? What are you more afraid of? Are you more afraid of Trump's deadly incompetence, or are you more afraid of the hordes sneaking over your back fence and raping your wife and burning down your garage?
Well, and he's going around the country pouring, jet fuel on this thing, trying to make more chaos, trying to get more protest.
Right, and using the power of the presidency to do it. And, I just think I just don't see the energy so far from Biden and Harris pushing back enough to make that
argument that this
I thought, didn't you think I thought Biden's speech yesterday was pretty straightforward, pretty good.
Yeah, first of all, he uses the word foment. Who uses the word foment anymore? Beside headline writers and journalists, nobody says foment. And then he says, will we rid ourselves of this toxin? I was trying to check Henry, all the historic plays in Shakespeare. Who will rid me of this toxin? I don't know. He doesn't talk like a real person sometimes. He talks like
there were a couple flourishes in there, but by and large, I think you could pick it apart. But I actually
John Kerry factor. Who among us does not love NASCAR?
I thought he did a pretty good job. He does that sort of listen, folks. I give him more credit than that. But I think as a piece, it was a pretty good job responding.
All right, last question. So 9 weeks out, 9 Tuesdays to go. Would you say that Donald Trump's likelihood of being reelected is more than 50% or less than 50% or exactly 50%?
I still think it's a slightly less than 50%.
And you think Biden's is slightly more, huh?
I think Biden is slightly more because I think they've made the right moves. I think Kamala has the ability. It depends to some extent on how good a campaign Biden runs. I mean, they really need to be in Wisconsin. They need to be in Michigan. They need to be in Pennsylvania.
See, I thought he should have been the first one to get to Kenosha.
I thought so too, but they may have been waved off by the locals. They may have been said, you don't come here. They may have. I would think.
Well, they tried to wave Trump off, but he didn't.
Yeah, but you see, if you and I were running the Biden campaign, and we said we want to get our guy to Kenosha, and the mayor of Kenosha and the governor of Wisconsin said, that is a bad idea. We don't want you here.
Right, because he's decent. But my point is, I'm not sure decency sells in 2020.
Well, that's a really good question. I don't know.
All right.
Can decency be indecency? I don't know.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you. Only 63 days to go.
All right, so we talk next week. Okay.
My ulcer's coming back, so I don't know. I'll talk to you later.
Take care.